Morning, Ben. How's things?
Good, thank you. You can tell this is an English podcast because we always start talking about the weather, Matt. And
Yes.
This week is no exception. As the first slide shows, all of a sudden, it's suddenly turned really cold, really frosty, which is no problem because what that means is, as the next slide shows, that the worms are probably going to stop hatching. So your lambs are probably going to stop being continually reinfected by worms after treatment. So once it turns cold like this, it's a really good time to treat them, probably with a break dose, Zolvix or the group 4, because they're not going to be continually reinfected. So that is my main suggestion, is to treat lambs now, because they're not going to be reinfected quite as much with the break on the hatching that this frost and snow is going to give them.
Always worth doing that check to make sure there's worms there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely think about it, but check there's worms there, because if there's no worms, you get no benefit from treating them.
Yes, that is quite right. Yes, should have said that. Quite right. The other thing that I've been seeing a lot of recently is hogs or shearlings, either that have lambed or haven't lambed, that have gone away somewhere and come back in pretty moderate condition. And it makes me wonder about the levels of immunity and how fragile that immunity is. I mean, it's fair to say that adult ewes have solid immunity to worms, but the road to getting there is often not very straight. And sometimes these hogs that are away, they're forgotten about, those shearlings, and they come back and people think, oh, well, they're not as good as I hoped they'd be, probably because they've been challenged by worms all that time. So this is just a reminder to the year earlier ones of those, the ones that are hogs now and might have gone away off from home. Have a close look at them when you see them to make sure they're not losing ground, those ones. When do they acquire immunity? Well, they do acquire immunity, but I think it's heavily affected by things like protein supply and what else those sheep are trying to do. So I think the moral is, Matt, do not assume that they're immune just because they are older than lambs.
No, that's right. They definitely need to have had the exposure, but also been on a decent plane of nutrition. And that's a key thing.
Yeah, nutrition, that means mainly protein, which is dropping off in the grass now, but also trace elements, I think, as well. Copper, selenium, cobalt. I'm sure most people have already done this, but I'm still continuing to see hogs that are away wintered, that people are getting caught out by them getting wormed. Mostly they'll be on cleaner pasture than they've been used to, but hopefully they'll have been done when they've gone. Their trace element will be fine, but still keep an eye on them so they don't get reinfected by worms, because the worms may knock them back. And again, especially as it's just started to be cold now, worm egg count them and treat them if necessary, and that'll do them the world of good. This is the time of year when we start to think about fluke, and here, hot off the press, is a ewe's liver which I had in yesterday. Now, this bloke had treated his ewes in the middle of September, and here is the liver. You can see how damaged that liver is, and you can see in that red circle there a sort of 6 to 8 week old fluke burrowing through the liver, and you can see the damage that the fluke, just younger than him, had done through that whole liver. So it's been the weirdest year, where it's been dry, and then it has been in the last month pretty wet. So the dry will have made the snails not wake up, the wet will have made the snails wake up, but this is very variable in different parts of the country, and even on different parts of the same farm probably. So the message now is blood samples in lambs or post-mortem in sheep. And this is the first this bloke knew about this fluke, when he had the ewe die and had these flukes obviously visible at post-mortem.
And especially if you've done a routine treatment because it's the right time of year, time you've always done it, then you might have been too early. And in that case, you need to be checking to see what's going on.
Yes.
Because if the fluke have just arrived, your treatment hasn't done any good.
Yeah. When calves are coming inside, it is a good idea, and most people who have done this or are doing this, if you haven't housed them yet, then it's a good idea to make the transition as smooth as possible. And I think that always means, if at all possible, giving them the silage that they're going to get inside, or the diet if possible when they're inside, while they're outside, so that their rumens can get used to it, because you can get a form of fog fever if there's a sudden increase in protein in the ration when calves get housed, and that can lead to pneumonia sometimes. There is emerging resistance to wormers among the worms, that's lungworms and gutworms, that affect cattle, calves especially. So it is probably worth establishing whether or not those calves do need worming, and in truth they probably do. But if you're worming them on housing, then it is worth checking 2 weeks later to make sure that ivermectin wormer has been effective, because I think there probably is, do you agree, some emerging resistance among the worms in calves, and you could lose ground if you don't spot it early.
You can lose ground very quickly. Yeah.
And then the last thing to say about cattle is that there is a lot of silage shortage, especially in the east of the country, and especially in areas where the weather was very dry through the growing season, and there's a lot of people feeding straw, and I've already seen 2 cases of straw impaction. The problem with straw impaction is that there is not enough protein in the straw for the rumen bugs to produce the enzymes to digest the straw, so the straw gets impacted, and the solution is to make absolutely sure you have enough rumen degradable protein for the cattle to be able to digest that straw. Some people feed straw and get away with it, some people get caught out, so just make sure there's enough protein in those rations so that you don't get caught out with straw impaction. So that, I think, is the summary. And to say again, the cold weather, I think, is a good thing. Take advantage of there being a period when the worms will not be hatching out and reinfecting your lambs or hogs. Test them, treat them, and then they'll get a little holiday from worms until the weather warms up again. If it does, which it might not, but if it does, they'll get a little holiday from continual reinfection. Don't forget about the hogs away from the farm, because they're your future of your farm. And then for cattle, make sure the diet is suitable and that the transition to the new diet is smooth.
Thank you, Ben. Good points as always. Very interesting about fluke. I think that's something that we do need to definitely pay attention to.
Yes, I was slightly surprised to see that, actually, with it having been so dry. But, you know, we shouldn't really be surprised. We should only be surprised that we're surprised. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Because everything's so unpredictable.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the moral of the story there is see what's happening on your farm. Don't get caught out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you again. Good stuff. And have a good Christmas if we don't see you before.
Oh, yes.
And we'll catch up in the new year.
Yep, will do. Good stuff. Cheers, Matt.
Cheers.